These people lied when they're telling the general public that PCR tests can tell us something about infections.
And how could such a simple deception grow so large with this PCR test?
Because it's the panic. Bobby Kennedy, when he gave a speech here in Berlin on August 29th, that was the largest demonstration that this country has ever had, even though the mainstream media, there were more than 1 million people there. The mainstream media here made this into something of no consequence, like they're telling there's 17,000 people or so that came together. We know, because we had 34 lawyers on the ground, we're cooperating with members of the police force, we know it was way more than 1 million. But he reminded people of something that, not just of what his uncle said some 50 years ago, Ich bin ein Berliner, famous, absolutely famous. Every German will always remember this. But also of a quote of Franklin D. Roosevelt, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to keep everyone in fear by pretending, by using these marionettes like Drosten and Wheeler and Tedros, who's kind of slipped into the background right now, but trying to use fear so that people will believe everyone, even their closest neighbors and relatives, is a danger to them, could be a super spreader, even if they're completely healthy and show no symptoms. That's why I'm saying it's not just a lie about PCR tests can tell us something about infections. In addition, they needed to lie about people can be infectious even if they don't show any symptoms. And that's another thing, because Drosten knows that he's lying. When he first published a preprint, or he wrote a preprint about, on January the 30th, about how this woman from Wuhan came to Frankfurt and infected a lot of people without her having any symptoms. That was wrong. There was a journalist by the name of Kai Kupferschmidt who pointed this out and said, hey, this is wrong. This woman did show symptoms because she was taking anti-flu medication. You don't do that if you don't have any symptoms. But still, he published his paper without correcting this. So what you have here is lie number one. There can be infections without symptoms, so that everybody here is afraid of everybody, even though nobody shows any symptoms, nobody is seriously sick. And the second lie is the PCR tests, with their positive results, tell us about infections. And there you have it. That's the state. Our focus is on the PCR test because if we manage to convince a court of law that this is a fraudulent enterprise, the PCR test being marketed with the assertion that it can detect infections, if we can convince a court of law that this is a false statement, then the whole house of cards is going to come crashing down because there's nothing else. That is the tool that they're using in order to keep people in panic mode. And there's no basis for this panic because, as I just pointed out, even according to the WHO, which couldn't quite escape the conclusions of John Ioannidis, the mortality is, or lethality is roughly the same as that of the common flu.
So inconsequential, basically.
Yeah, already herd immunity. That's another thing that has been overlooked. So there's absolutely no reason for vaccines except for the pharmaceutical industry to make money, and probably cause a lot of damage as far as health, and even there's probably going to be a lot of fatalities too, because these vaccines haven't really been tested properly. Usually it takes between 5 and 7 years to develop a new vaccine, and now this should be done, or they're claiming it can be done in 9 months or so. I don't think so.
And can you comment on your lawsuit you're going to do next week? This will be published.
No, this is not going to be one single lawsuit. It's going to be a number of different lawsuits that are going to be filed both on here in Germany, on this side of the Atlantic, and in the United States. We're here in Germany. We're going to start filing these lawsuits because we're a little bit ahead of the, is to uncover the whole thing, to use what we've learned through the Corona Committee, to use these pieces of evidence and the experts that we've heard in order to convince a court of law that this is a staged pandemic and that there's other goals, other people who are behind this and trying to push completely different goals. This has nothing to do with the world's health.